year was 44 BC, and Rome had never seen a man as powerful as Julius Caesar. His victories stretched across continents. His enemies had either surrendered, fled into exile, or died on the battlefield. The republic that had once been ruled by competing senators and elected officials now revolved around a single individual. From the bustling marketplaces of Rome to the distant frontiers of Gaul, Caesar's name commanded both admiration and fear. To the common people, he was a hero. To his soldiers, he was a legend. But to many senators, he had become something far more dangerous, a king in everything but name. They feared that the republic, the political system that had governed Rome for nearly 5 centuries, was quietly slipping away. Ironically, the man who had conquered the world was about to lose the one battle he never expected to fight, not against foreign armies, not against rival generals, but against the very men who smiled at him inside the Senate. This is the story of how Julius Caesar rose higher than any Roman before him, and why that rise convinced his closest allies that he had to die. Only a few years earlier, Rome had been consumed by civil war. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon River with his army, he knowingly broke one of Rome's oldest laws. No general was allowed to bring troops into Italy. By crossing that small river, Caesar declared that he would no longer obey the Senate. The consequences were immediate. Rome erupted into chaos. His greatest rival, Pompey the Great, fled the capital along with many senators. They believed Caesar had declared war against the Republic itself. What followed was one of the bloodiest civil wars in Roman history. Caesar defeated Pompey in Greece. He pursued him to Egypt, only to discover that Pompey had already been murdered by Egyptian officials hoping to impress the Roman conqueror. Instead of celebrating, Caesar reportedly wept at the sight of Pompey's severed head. Despite years of rivalry, Pompey had once been his ally and fellow Roman. But Caesar's work was far from over. He crushed resistance in Egypt, where he formed his famous alliance with Queen Cleopatra VII. He marched into Asia Minor and defeated King Pharnaces in a lightning campaign so swift that he summarized the victory in just 3 Latin words: Veni, Vidi Vici. I came, I saw, I conquered. He returned to Africa to destroy the remaining supporters of Pompey, then crossed into Spain to defeat Pompey's sons in one final campaign. At last, after years of constant warfare, Caesar stood alone. There were no rivals left, no opposing armies, no politicians capable of challenging his authority. For the first time in decades, Rome enjoyed peace. Yet sometimes peace creates fears that war cannot. When Caesar entered Rome after his victories, the city erupted into celebration. Triumphal processions filled the streets. Captured treasures from distant lands glittered under the Mediterranean sun. Exotic animals amazed cheering crowds. Thousands of prisoners marched in chains, reminding everyone of Rome's growing power. For days, festivals, games, and public feasts transformed the capital into one enormous celebration. The people adored Caesar. Many believed he had rescued Rome from endless civil war. Veteran soldiers received land as rewards for their loyalty. Poor citizens benefited from new reforms and public projects. Debts were reorganized. Colonies were founded to provide opportunities for thousands of unemployed Romans. Construction projects created jobs across the Republic. Unlike many politicians who enriched themselves alone, Caesar spent enormous sums improving the city itself. He repaired roads, expanded the Senate helps, improved the calendar, introducing what became known as the Julian calendar, a system so accurate that much of the modern world would continue using its basic structure for over 1,600 years. Markets became more organized. Government administration became more efficient. Rome appeared stronger than ever before. To ordinary citizens, Caesar looked like the greatest leader they had ever known. But not everyone shared that opinion. Behind the magnificent celebrations, another emotion was growing: fear. Many senators had supported Caesar during the Civil War because they believed his extraordinary powers would be temporary. They assumed that once peace returned, Caesar would step down and restore the Republic to its traditional system. Instead, the opposite happened. Every few months, Caesar accepted another honor. First, he became dictator for a limited term, then dictator for 10 years. Finally, in early 44 BC, the Senate granted him the title that changed everything: Dictator Perpetua, dictator for life. No Roman had ever possessed such permanent authority. The title shocked many citizens. Rome had allowed temporary dictators before, but only during emergencies, and never for life. The office was designed to solve short-term crises, not to create permanent rulers. To many senators, this decision felt less like a constitutional reform and more like the death sentence of the Republic itself. To understand why the Senate reacted so strongly, we must travel back nearly 500 years. According to Roman tradition, the city had once been ruled by kings. The last king, Lucius Tarquinius Superbus, became infamous for cruelty, arrogance, and abuse of power. Eventually, the Roman people revolted. The monarchy was overthrown. The king was expelled forever. In its place, Romans created the Republic, a government built on one simple principle: no single man should ever hold absolute power again. This belief became sacred. Roman children learned it in school. Soldiers swore loyalty to it. Politicians built entire careers defending it. Even speaking favorably about kings could destroy a person's reputation. The word Rex king was almost an insult in Roman politics. That is why Caesar's growing influence terrified so many people. He never officially called himself king, but every new privilege made him appear closer to becoming one. Caesar's statues stood throughout the city. His image appeared on Roman coins while he was still alive, an honor traditionally reserved for gods or deceased heroes. He wore magnificent purple robes embroidered with gold, clothing once associated with ancient kings. A golden chair was permanently reserved for him in the Senate. When foreign ambassadors arrived, they often bowed before him. Some officials even referred to him as the father of the fatherland. One event disturbed the Senate more than almost any other. During public ceremonies, many senators stood respectfully when Caesar entered the room, but Caesar himself often remained seated while receiving delegations, including senators. Whether he intended disrespect or simply believed his position allowed such behavior remains debated by historians. Regardless of his intentions, many senators interpreted it as arrogance. To proud Roman nobles, the message seemed unmistakable. Caesar no longer considered himself merely the first among equals. He believed himself above everyone else. Yet the greatest source of fear came not from Caesar's titles or ceremonies. It came from his popularity. For centuries, Rome's aristocratic families had controlled politics through wealth, influence, and tradition. Now one man threatened that entire system. Whenever Caesar proposed reforms, the people supported him. Whenever elections approached, candidates loyal to Caesar usually succeeded. Veterans worshipped him. The urban poor praised him. Provincial communities welcomed him as a reformer. Even many former enemies admired his generosity after victory. Unlike previous Roman leaders, Caesar rarely sought revenge. Instead of executing defeated opponents, he often pardoned them. This policy became famous as Clementia Caesar, Caesar's mercy. Many senators who later plotted against him were alive only because Caesar had forgiven them after the Civil War. He believed mercy would heal Rome. Instead, it gave his enemies another chance. Among those forgiven men was Marcus Junius Brutus. Brutus belonged to one of Rome's oldest and most respected families. His ancestors had helped overthrow Rome's last king centuries earlier. For generations, the Brutus family proudly defended the Republic. Ironically, fate placed Marcus Brutus in an impossible position. Although he had fought against Caesar during the Civil War, Caesar chose not to punish him. Instead, he welcomed Brutus back into public life. He promoted him to important political offices, trusted him with major responsibilities, invited him into his inner circle. Some ancient writers even claimed Caesar cared for Brutus almost like a son. Whether that was true or simply political gossip remains uncertain. What is certain is that Caesar trusted him completely. Brutus dined with him, worked alongside him, shared conversations about Rome's future. No one, not even Caesar himself, could imagine how history would remember their relationship. Another man watched Caesar's rise with growing resentment. His name was Gaius Cassius Longinus. Unlike Brutus, Cassius never truly admired Caesar. He had fought against him during the Civil War and accepted defeat only because resistance became impossible. Cassius was intelligent, ambitious, and deeply suspicious of concentrated power. He believed Caesar's reforms disguised a far more dangerous ambition. To Cassius, every new honor accepted by Caesar proved one thing: the Republic was dying, and unless someone acted soon, Rome would awaken under the rule of a king. For months, these fears spread quietly through the halls of the Senate. Whispers replaced speeches, private dinners replaced public debates, small conversations turned into secret meetings. No one dared accuse Caesar openly, not yet, but beneath the surface of Rome's peaceful streets, a conspiracy had already begun to take shape. As Rome celebrated Julius Caesar's victories, another battle was quietly unfolding in the shadows. No armies marched through the streets, no swords clashed on distant battlefields. Instead, the war was being fought with whispers behind closed doors. Every evening, small groups of senators gathered in private homes, away from the eyes of Caesar's supporters. Servants were dismissed, doors were locked, and voices were lowered. They spoke not of foreign enemies, but of the man who ruled Rome itself. To them, Julius Caesar had become the greatest threat the Republic had ever faced. The question was no longer whether something should be done. The question had become, who would dare to do it? Among all the dissatisfied senators, one man emerged as the driving force behind the conspiracy: Gaius Cassius Longinus. Cassius was a skilled soldier and an experienced politician. He had fought bravely against Caesar during the Civil War but had been defeated. Like many others, he expected punishment after the war ended. Instead, Caesar forgave him. He restored Cassius to public office and allowed him to return to political life. Most people would have been grateful. Cassius was not. Deep inside, he believed that accepting mercy from Caesar was almost an insult. In his eyes, every pardon reminded Rome that Caesar now held the power to decide who lived, who died, and who received forgiveness. That was not the behavior of a citizen. That was the behavior of a ruler. And Cassius hated rulers. Ancient historian Plutarch later described Cassius as a man of sharp intelligence, restless ambition, and powerful determination. He was exactly the kind of person who could organize a dangerous conspiracy. But Cassius understood one important fact: no matter how intelligent he was, the Roman people would never support an assassination led by him alone. He needed someone whose reputation was beyond question, someone respected by both the Senate and the people, someone whose name symbolized honor. There was only one choice: Marcus Junius Brutus. Unlike Cassius, Brutus admired many of Caesar's achievements. He respected Caesar's military genius. He appreciated the forgiveness Caesar had shown after the Civil War. Caesar had trusted him with important responsibilities and treated him with remarkable kindness. Brutus owed much of his political career to Caesar. Yet another force pulled him in the opposite direction: his family history. The name Brutus carried enormous weight in Roman history. Nearly 5 centuries earlier, an ancestor named Lucius Junius Brutus had helped overthrow Rome's final king and establish the Roman Republic. For generations, the Brutus family proudly defended that legacy. humanity. As a child, Marcus Brutus had grown up hearing stories about courage, sacrifice, and liberty. His ancestors had fought to ensure that no king would ever rule Rome again. Now people whispered that Caesar intended to become exactly that, a king. Brutus found himself trapped between gratitude and duty, between friendship and principle, between the man he respected and the republic he loved. Cassius knew exactly how to exploit Brutus's inner conflict. According to ancient sources, he began meeting Brutus frequently, not with threats or commands, but with questions. What happens if Caesar rules for life? What becomes of the republic? What would your famous ancestors think? Little by little, Cassius planted seeds of doubt. He reminded Brutus that history would judge every senator living in this generation. If Caesar became king, future Romans might ask one terrible question: why did no one stop him? Cassius also organized a clever psychological campaign. Anonymous messages began appearing throughout Rome. Some were secretly placed on Brutus's chair. Others appeared on statues of his famous ancestor. They carried simple but powerful messages. Brutus, are you asleep? Rome needs another Brutus. Will you allow a king to rule? Brutus believed these notes came from ordinary Roman citizens desperate to save the republic. In reality, many historians believe Cassius himself arranged them. The plan worked perfectly. Brutus slowly began to believe that resisting Caesar was not personal revenge, it was a patriotic duty. Once Brutus agreed to join, everything changed. His decision transformed a small conspiracy into a movement. One by one, respected senators quietly pledged their support. Among them was Decimus Junius Brutus Albinus, another trusted friend of Caesar. Unlike Marcus Brutus, Decimus had fought beside Caesar for years. He had commanded armies under him. He had shared military victories. Caesar trusted Decimus so completely that he even named him as one of the heirs in his will if his primary heirs died. Few people stood closer to Caesar than Decimus, yet even he joined the conspiracy. Then came Trebonius, an experienced general who had served Caesar faithfully during the Gallic Wars. He too entered the plot. Soon Ligurius, Semprot, Casca, Metellus, Cinna, and many other senators secretly pledged themselves to the cause. By early March, nearly 60 influential Romans had become conspirators. Each had different motives. Some genuinely feared dictatorship. Some had lost political influence. Some envied Caesar's popularity. Others simply believed the republic could no longer survive while one man possessed unlimited authority. Different reasons. One goal: Caesar had to die. The conspirators faced another difficult question: how should they remove him? Poison seemed too uncertain. Military rebellion would certainly fail because Caesar's veterans remained fiercely loyal. Attacking him in public risked intervention by soldiers and ordinary citizens. Eventually, they chose the Senate itself. The location offered several advantages. Weapons were rarely expected inside political meetings. Caesar usually arrived with little personal protection. Most importantly, many conspirators would already be present without attracting suspicion. It was the perfect place. Now they needed the perfect moment. Around this time, rumors spread throughout Rome that Caesar was preparing for another great military campaign. Far to the east lay the powerful Parthian Empire, Rome's greatest remaining rival. Years earlier, the Parthians had humiliated Rome by destroying the army of Marcus Crassus at the Battle of Carrhae. Caesar intended to erase that humiliation forever. He planned a massive invasion that could last several years. If he left Italy, the conspirators feared their opportunity would disappear. A victorious campaign against Parthia would make Caesar even more popular than before, perhaps unstoppable. The decision became urgent. If they intended to act, they had to act now. Several dates were discussed. Several locations were considered. Finally, they settled on one specific meeting of the Senate. March 15, 44 BC, the date known in the Roman calendar as the Ides of March. The Senate would gather at the Theater of Pompey because the regular Senate house was under renovation. Ironically, Caesar would attend an important political session inside a building constructed by his former rival, Pompey the Great. The symbolism appealed to several conspirators. The conqueror of Pompey would meet his end beneath Pompey's own statue. History often writes its greatest moments with strange irony. Although nearly 60 men joined the conspiracy, very few knew every detail of the plan. The organizers feared betrayal. If even one senator warned Caesar, the entire operation would collapse. Each conspirator accepted enormous personal risk. Failure meant execution for treason. Success meant uncertain consequences. Some privately questioned whether they should also kill Mark Antony. Antony remained Caesar's closest political ally and an experienced military commander. Leaving him alive could be dangerous. Cassius strongly supported eliminating Antony alongside Caesar, but Brutus refused. He argued that the conspiracy must appear honorable. They were removing a tyrant, not conducting a massacre. If they killed too many people, Rome would see them as murderers rather than defenders of liberty. After lengthy debate, Brutus's opinion prevailed. Only Caesar would die. The decision would later prove to be one of the greatest mistakes in Roman history. As the appointed day approached, the conspirators continued behaving normally. They attended Senate sessions, shared meals with Caesar, smiled during conversations. Some even accepted invitations to his home. Caesar noticed nothing unusual. His confidence remained unshaken. Why should he suspect danger? He had forgiven most of these men personally. He believed mercy created loyalty. Instead, mercy had allowed enemies to stand closer than ever before. Every handshake concealed deception. Every smile hid fear. Every conversation brought Rome one step closer to one of history's most famous assassinations. Yet even as the conspirators finalized their plans, strange stories began spreading across the city. Priests spoke of disturbing omens. Animals behaved in unusual ways. Citizens claimed to witness mysterious signs in the sky. Most Romans took such warnings seriously, and before long, those warnings would reach Caesar himself. As the Ides of March drew closer, an uneasy feeling spread across Rome. The city itself appeared calm. Merchants continued selling their goods in the crowded markets. Senators attended meetings as if nothing unusual was happening. Soldiers guarded public buildings. Children played in the streets, unaware that history was only days away from changing forever. But beneath that calm surface, tension was everywhere. The conspirators had chosen their day. Their daggers were ready. There was only one thing left to do: wait. Ancient Romans believed that the gods constantly sent signs to warn humanity of future events. Before major battles, elections, or political decisions, priests examined the flight of birds, studied the entrails of sacrificed animals, and interpreted unusual natural events. These rituals were deeply respected throughout Roman society. Even powerful generals rarely ignored them. Caesar himself had often consulted priests before launching military campaigns. But in March of 44 BC, the signs seemed darker than usual. One sacrifice reportedly revealed that the animal lacked a heart, a terrifying omen according to Roman belief. Another sacrifice was declared unfavorable by the priests. Some claimed strange lights had appeared in the night sky. Others spoke of birds behaving unusually around the city. Whether these stories actually occurred or were added later by ancient historians is impossible to know. But one thing is certain: many Romans believed the gods were trying to deliver a warning. Among those who warned Caesar was a mysterious fortune teller. Ancient sources never reveal much about the man himself, but his warning became one of history's most famous predictions. As Caesar walked through the streets during a public ceremony, the fortune teller stepped forward and spoke only a few words: "Beware the Ides of March." The sentence was simple. The meaning was terrifying. The Ides referred to the 15th day of March. Caesar reportedly looked at the man with curiosity. He had faced assassins before. He had survived dangerous battles against impossible odds. Why should one date frighten him? He dismissed the warning and continued with his business. The fortune teller disappeared into the crowd, but his words remained. The closer March 15th came, the more unusual events seemed to surround Caesar. Friends advised him to be cautious. Some politicians quietly suggested postponing important meetings. Others noticed that Caesar himself appeared unusually tired. Years of constant campaigning had affected his health. Ancient writers mentioned that he sometimes suffered from dizziness and sudden seizures, although modern historians continue debating the exact nature of his illness. Despite these concerns, Caesar remained determined to continue working. He believed Rome depended upon him. Within weeks he planned to leave Italy for an enormous military campaign against the Parthian Empire. Thousands of soldiers were already preparing for the expedition. Supplies had been gathered. Commanders had received their orders. Nothing suggested that the greatest obstacle to Caesar's future waited not in the deserts of the east, but inside the Senate of Rome. The night before the assassination, something happened that would later become legendary. Caesar's wife, Calpurnia, awoke in terror. According to several ancient historians, she had experienced a horrifying dream. In the dream, she saw her husband lying dead in her arms. His body was covered in blood. The streets of Rome echoed with cries of mourning. Some versions of the story describe blood flowing from Caesar's statue while Roman citizens desperately tried to wash their hands in it. Calpurnia believed the dream was a direct warning from the gods. She begged Caesar not to leave home the following morning. Her fear was unlike anything he had ever seen. Again and again she pleaded with him: "Do not go. Cancel the meeting. Wait one more day." Unlike many Roman husbands, Caesar respected Calpurnia's judgment. For perhaps the first time in his political career, he hesitated. Morning arrived. Outside Caesar's residence, the city slowly came to life. Messengers waited. Officials prepared documents. Senators made their way toward the theater of Pompey for the day's meeting. Inside the house, however, Caesar made an unexpected decision. He would remain at home. Calpurnia's nightmare had deeply disturbed him. Combined with the recent warnings from priests and a fortune teller, it seemed wiser to postpone the Senate meeting. For a brief moment, history changed. If Caesar stayed home that day, the conspiracy would fail. The assassins would lose their opportunity. Perhaps someone would reveal the plot. Perhaps the conspirators would lose their courage. Perhaps Julius Caesar would live for many more years. But history rarely grants second chances. When news reached the conspirators that Caesar might not attend, panic spread among them. Months of careful planning were collapsing. Some feared the conspiracy had already been discovered. Others worried Caesar would never again appear without heavy protection. One man understood that immediate action was necessary. His name was Decimus Junius Brutus Albinus. Of all the conspirators, Decimus enjoyed Caesar's deepest trust. He was not merely a political ally. He was an old military companion, a man who had fought beside Caesar during difficult campaigns. If anyone could persuade Caesar to change his mind, it was Decimus. Decimus hurried to Caesar's house. He found the dictator preparing to cancel the Senate session. Rather than arguing aggressively, Decimus spoke calmly. He reminded Caesar that dozens of senators had already gathered. Canceling the meeting at the last moment might appear disrespectful. Some senators, he warned, could interpret the decision as cowardice. Others might believe Caesar feared imaginary superstitions. Would Rome's greatest general allow rumors and dreams to dictate government affairs? Decimus carefully appealed to Caesar's rod. He reminded him of his courage, of his reputation, of the importance of appearing fearless before the Senate. Finally, he added one last argument. The senators planned to approve several important measures that day. Postponing the meeting could delay Caesar's future plans. The words had their intended effect. Slowly, Caesar changed his mind. Calpurnia begged him once more to stay. He gently reassured her. Then he put on his toga, stepped outside his home, and unknowingly seemingly began the final journey of his life. As Caesar traveled through Rome, another opportunity to save him almost appeared. A loyal supporter named Artemidorus, a teacher who had somehow learned of the conspiracy, waited along Caesar's route. He carried a letter. Inside it were the names of the conspirators and a desperate warning. As Caesar approached, Artemidorus pushed through the crowd. He handed Caesar the document. "Please," he urged, "read this immediately. It concerns your personal safety." Caesar accepted the letter, but before he could open it, several people approached with petitions and official business. One request followed another. The document remained unopened in his hand. Historians believe that if Caesar had simply paused for a few seconds to read those words, the assassination might never have happened. Instead, the warning disappeared beneath a pile of official papers. The moment was lost forever. Near the entrance to the theater of Pompey stood the same fortune teller who had warned Caesar weeks earlier. As Caesar passed him, he smiled confidently. "The Ides of March have come," the fortune teller calmly replied. "Yes, Caesar, but they have not yet passed." Caesar continued walking. Inside the Senate chamber, the conspirators had already taken their positions. Each man concealed a dagger beneath his toga. Their hearts raced. Some later admitted their hands trembled with fear. If even one conspirator lost his nerve, the entire plan could collapse. Yet no one stepped back. The doors closed. Julius Caesar entered the chamber. The trap had been set. Within minutes, the most famous assassination in history would begin. As Julius Caesar entered the Senate chamber inside the theater of Pompey, nothing appeared unusual. The senators rose to greet him as they always did. Some nodded respectfully. Others smiled politely, hiding the fear and determination that filled their minds. Caesar walked confidently toward his golden chair, carrying the unopened letter that might have saved his life. Around him stood nearly 60 conspirators. Each man wore the traditional white toga of a Roman senator. Hidden beneath those robes were sharpened daggers. For months they had rehearsed this moment in their minds. Now there was no turning back. The meeting began like countless others. Several senators approached Caesar with petitions concerning political matters. Such requests were common, and Caesar had grown accustomed to hearing them before official business started. One of the conspirators, Lucius Caesar, stepped forward carrying a petition. He asked Caesar to pardon and recall his exiled brother. Caesar had already rejected the request several times. Once again, he calmly refused. But Cimber did not step away. Instead, he moved even closer. He grabbed Caesar's toga with both hands, pulling it sharply from his shoulders. For a Roman nobleman, this was an extraordinary insult. Caesar frowned and shouted, "Why, this is violence." Those words became the signal. The conspiracy had begun. Standing behind Caesar was Publius Aurelius Casca, the man chosen to strike first. His hand trembled as he drew the dagger hidden beneath his toga. For a brief moment, fear nearly overcame him. Then he lunged forward. The blade struck Caesar near the neck and shoulder. The wound was shallow. Startled rather than seriously injured, Caesar reacted instantly. Despite being 55 years old, he still possessed the instincts of a veteran soldier. He spun around, grabbed Casca's arm, and according to ancient accounts, cried out in Latin, "Casca, you villain, what are you doing?" Casca panicked. Realizing the first blow had failed to kill Caesar, he shouted to the other conspirators in Greek, "Brothers, help me." Suddenly, the entire chamber exploded into chaos. Daggers flashed from every direction. One senator stabbed Caesar in the side. Another attacked his back. Another aimed for his chest. Caesar tried desperately to defend himself. He struck at attackers with his writing stylus, the small metal instrument he had been using for documents. For a few terrifying seconds, Rome's greatest general fought alone against dozens of assassins. The Senate chamber echoed with screams. Some conspirators accidentally wounded each other in the confusion. Others hesitated before forcing themselves to strike. Blood covered the marble floor. The attack had become uncontrollable. Then Caesar looked across the room. Among the faces surrounding him, he recognized someone he never expected to see, Marcus Junius Brutus. For a brief instant, everything seemed to stop. This was not merely another senator. This was a man Caesar trusted, a man he had forgiven after the Civil War, a man he had promoted, protected, and welcomed into his inner circle. Ancient historians disagree about Caesar's final words. Some believe he spoke nothing at all after seeing Brutus. Others report that he whispered in Greek, "Kaisu, teknon," meaning, "You too, child." Centuries later, William Shakespeare transformed that moment into one of the most famous lines ever written, "Et brute, then fall, Caesar." Although Shakespeare's version became legendary, historians cannot confirm that Caesar actually spoke those exact words. What remains beyond doubt is this: when Caesar saw Brutus among the attackers, he stopped resisting. Perhaps he realized there was no escape. Perhaps betrayal wounded him more deeply than any dagger. Slowly, he pulled part of his toga over his face, preserving his dignity even in death. Moments later, more blades struck his body. Then, silence. Julius Caesar collapsed at the foot of the great statue of Pompey, the very rival he had defeated years before. History could not have written a more symbolic ending. The conqueror of Pompey had died beneath Pompey's gaze. When the violence ended, Caesar lay motionless on the marble floor. His white toga had turned crimson. Blood spread across the chamber. The assassin stepped back, breathing heavily. Doctors later counted 23 stab wounds. Surprisingly, medical examination suggested that only one of those wounds had actually been fatal. Most injuries were the result of panic, confusion, and dozens of men striking at the same target simultaneously. The most powerful man in Rome was dead. He had survived years of warfare. He had defeated entire kingdoms. Yet he had fallen within minutes inside a political meeting. For several seconds, no one moved. Then panic swept through the Senate. Many senators who had known nothing about the conspiracy fled in terror. Officials dropped their documents. Servants ran screaming into the streets. Some believed another civil war had already begun. Others feared soldiers would soon surround the building. The conspirators, however, believed they had achieved something glorious. Raising their blood-covered daggers toward the ceiling, they shouted, Libertas, freedom. Again and again they cried, Rome is free, liberty has been restored. In their minds, they had saved the Republic. Surely the Roman people would celebrate. Surely citizens would fill the streets thanking them for removing a tyrant. But when they walked outside, they found something entirely different. Rome was silent. Citizens stared in disbelief. Shops closed their doors. Families hurried inside their homes. No celebrations erupted. No crowds welcomed the assassins. Fear spread faster than joy. Many ordinary Romans had loved Caesar. He had given them food, land, entertainment, employment. He had forgiven enemies instead of slaughtering them. To these people, Caesar was not a tyrant. He was their protector. The conspirators suddenly realized something terrifying. They had killed the most popular man in Rome, and the people were not cheering. One man the conspirators had intentionally spared was Mark Antony. Earlier, Cassius had argued that Antony should die alongside Caesar. He feared Antony's military experience and influence, but Brutus refused. "We are sacrificing one man for liberty," he insisted. "We are not butchers." During the assassination, another conspirator had cleverly delayed Antony outside the Senate chamber by engaging him in conversation. By the time Antony realized something was wrong, Caesar was already dead. At first, Antony fled. He feared he might be the next target. Disguised in ordinary clothing, he escaped through the streets of Rome. The conspirators assumed Antony had abandoned politics forever. They could not have been more mistaken. As night fell over Rome, Antony quietly began making plans, not to surrender, but to avenge Caesar. The men who believed they had saved the Republic had unknowingly created an even more dangerous enemy. A few days later, Caesar's will was officially opened. Thousands gathered to hear its contents. Many expected enormous fortunes to be distributed among powerful politicians. Instead, Caesar surprised everyone one final time. Every Roman citizen would receive a financial gift from his personal wealth. He also donated his magnificent private gardens across the Tiber River to become public parks for the people of Rome. Even in death, Caesar remembered the ordinary citizens who had supported him. Then came the greatest surprise of all. Caesar named his 18-year-old grandnephew, Gaius Octavius, as his adopted son and principal heir. The young man inherited Caesar's name, his fortune, his political legacy. Few people paid much attention to the quiet teenager living far from Rome. Within a few years, the entire world would know him as Augustus, the first emperor of Rome. Soon after, Mark Antony organized Caesar's funeral. The conspirators expected a calm ceremony. Instead, Antony delivered one of history's most powerful funeral speeches. Standing before thousands of grieving Romans, he displayed Caesar's blood-stained toga. He pointed to each tear made by the assassins' daggers. He reminded the crowd of Caesar's generosity, his victories, his mercy, his gifts to the people. The atmosphere changed completely. Grief became anger. Anger became fury. The crowd erupted. Romans seized benches, furniture, and pieces of wood to build a massive funeral pyre in the forum. Some people threw jewelry and family treasures into the flames as a final tribute. Others rushed into the streets searching for the conspirators. Brutus, Cassius, and their allies barely escaped the city alive. The republic they believed they had rescued was collapsing before their eyes. The years that followed proved how greatly the conspirators had misjudged the situation. Instead of restoring peace, the assassination triggered another devastating civil war. Mark Antony gathered Caesar's loyal veterans. Young Octavian returned to Italy to claim his inheritance. Together, Antony, Octavian, and Lepidus formed the Second Triumvirate, hunting down Caesar's assassins across the Roman world. One by one, the conspirators were defeated. In 42 BC, at the Battle of Philippi, Brutus and Cassius suffered complete defeat. Rather than be captured, both men took their own lives. Their dream of saving the Republic died with them. Years later, Antony himself would fight Octavian for supreme power. That conflict ended at the Battle of Actium. Octavian emerged victorious. In 27 BC, the Senate granted him a new title, Augustus. Although Rome continued pretending to be a republic, everyone understood the truth. The age of emperors had begun. Ironically, the assassination intended to prevent monarchy had achieved exactly the opposite. The republic was gone forever. On the afternoon of March 15, 44 BC, the conspirators believed they had saved Rome. Instead, they destroyed the very system they hoped to protect. The daggers that ended Julius Caesar's life also ended the Roman Republic's final chance of survival. History remembers Caesar not because he died. History remembers him because his death changed the world. Without the assassination, there might never have been an Emperor Augustus. Without Augustus, there might never have been the Roman Empire at its greatest height. The Ides of March became more than a date. It became a warning that echoes through history, a reminder that power, ambition, loyalty, and betrayal can shape the destiny of civilizations. In the next episode, we'll follow the rise of Octavian, the young heir no one feared, who would defeat every rival and transform Rome from a republic into the greatest empire the ancient world had ever seen.